Hey readers, welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is Paloma, and today's video is going to be all about book adaptations. So let's get started. What kind of prompted this topic discussion is that last week it was reported that Charles Melton and Lucy Liu are going to star in the film adaptation of Audition by Katie Kitamura. And I really enjoyed Audition by Katie Kitamura. I think it was a great exploration on identity and performance within family and what it means to kind of take on these assigned roles within the familial space. I think Katie did a great job, and I think with the right hands, it'll translate really well on screen. And so it got me kind of thinking, what books would I like to see adapted for film and or television? A lot of the films and TV shows that we watch nowadays, and really since kind of like the dawn of film itself, it's all been for the most part based on books or has some semblance of influence from a novel that the creator has read before. And I recently watched High and Low by Akira Kurosawa, and even that is based on a novel called The King's Ransom by Evan Hunter. And so a lot of what we know or what we're really familiar with in terms of TV and movie, 100% is adapted in some way, whether it's a book or if it's a play or something that has been influenced by something else. One of the new booktok controversies that's going on is the release of the new Wuthering Heights adaptation by Emerald Fennell that's supposed to be adapting the Wuthering Heights book by Emily Bronte. I personally have never read Wuthering Heights. That's on my TBR. I'm really hoping to get to it soon. But from the trailer, I could already see that it wasn't anything like what Emily Bronte meant in some way, shape, or form. And a lot of people who have read the books and love the book were also commenting and were like, this is nothing like what Emily Bronte was trying to say. This shows nothing that exemplifies the themes and characters. I think they said one of the male leads is a person of color, and to have Jacob Elordi play that character kind of erases whatever themes and situations that character goes through throughout the novel. And so it kind of begs the question, what can we do to make these adaptations kind of faithful to the source material? And in college, I took a book to film adaptation course. And within that, we went over about 3 or 4 books. The ones that I can list off the top of my head is Lolita, Solaris, and The Shining. And so throughout that course, we kind of delved into the differences between the book and the movie, what kind of gets put on the cutting room floor when adapting a book, what is translated well in film, how are general audiences going to view this, and things like that and more. And one of the reasons why I love adaptations is that it generates a new audience for these books. In some ways, these adaptations, whether the director kind of stays the course or kind of varies off, it really doesn't do much for someone who's read the book beforehand, and especially if they liked it. There are a few times where the movie has been better than the book, but as anybody who reads books knows, the book is usually better than the movie. In one case, I think the Conclave movie elevated what the book already established. I think it went a little bit deeper than what Robert Harris was trying to do. So that's one instance, at least to my experience, where the movie kind of outshone the book. And honestly, there's a lot of work that goes into adapting a book because, like I said before, you have to figure out what will translate well to general audiences rather than just that select demographic of people who have read this book. Because you're trying to generate a new audience that will take a look at this film and be like, oh, maybe I want to check out the book and see what it's about. And so it generates another kind of revenue, not only for the film, but for the publishing industry as well. And when I was taking this course, I do remember writing my essay on that a lot of modern books are kind of writing in the hopes to be adapted. With Colleen Hoover getting nearly all her books adapted and things like that, people are kind of itching to have their books made for film or television, because it's another bonus check for them rather than publishing these books because they have something to say. And I think that's kind of what's going on here with Wuthering Heights by Emerald Fennell. I think she's trying to gain a different audience for Wuthering Heights that's not the norm for the people who have read the book. And if you've watched any of her other movies like Saltburn or Promising Young Woman, she has an idea. I just don't know if she knows how to execute it better than what she has. Because I watched Saltburn with a friend of mine. She absolutely loved it. I thought it was kind of blasé. It just felt like a rip of The Talented Mr. Ripley that didn't really go anywhere. It didn't really dive as deep as I think she wanted it to. And so the same thing is going to happen here with Wuthering Heights in my prediction. I think she's relying on shock value to kind of get a message across. And again, I've never read Wuthering Heights. I don't know anything about it. So I don't really know how it's going to play out if, like, some people theorize that it's, a girl pretending that she's in Wuthering Heights in her head. If that was the case, then Emerald Fennell should have just said outright, this is loosely adapted from Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. She's really advertising it as a film based on the source material. So we'll see how it goes. Other than books, one of my passions is movies. And so when I can combine the two and get something good out of it, it makes my heart sing. Like High and Low by Akira Kurosawa, that is to me, well, I haven't really read the novel King's Ransom, but I can just say that the film version of it, which is High and Low, is really well done. I think he's a fantastic filmmaker and mwah, just brilliant. And, the Hunger Games movies, Maze Runner, I think when done right, books and film slash TV shows can really exemplify these themes that we're finding in these books. And once again, find a new home that kind of elevates the conversation of these themes and kind of bring people together. I have a book club. One of the activities that they want to do is watch the film version of books that we've read. I read a lot of classic books, so I have a lot to choose from when it comes to film adaptations. One of my favorites is The Count of Monte Cristo. If you know me, I always talk about The Count of Monte Cristo, and the film adaptation with Jim Caviezel is the one that I know. It's probably the only one I've really seen. I know there's one that came out maybe about a year ago. I have not had the chance to watch it, so I don't know how it compares in comparison to not only the movie with Jim Caviezel, but also the book itself. And that's what's really fun about having multiple adaptations. You can kind of say which one's the better one. It's the same thing with Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Lots of people around my age kind of know the one with Keira Knightley and Matthew Macfadyen. I watched one from the 1940s, and it is nothing like the book itself. It's very loosely adapted from it. But it's still a fun time, honestly. Like, these are the characters but they're also not. Adaptations can be fun, but they can also be really bad. I can't think of a bad one off the top of my head where I was like, oh my god, what is this? I can't even believe they did it. The one that comes off the top of my head is probably Cape Fear, the one directed by Martin Scorsese. I did not read The Executioners, so I can't really compare the two. I can only do a comparison of the 90s version directed by Martin Scorsese versus the one with Robert Mitchum and Gregory Peck. And between those two, the one with Robert Mitchum and Gregory Peck kind of takes the cake. I don't know what happened with Martin Scorsese's version of Cape Fear, but it really goes off the rails towards the end. And it's just unlike anything I've ever seen. And I think the one with Robert Mitchum and Gregory Peck is the one that is the most faithful to the adaptation. I could talk about movies all day long, but let's get into the books that I think should be adapted into film or television. So some of these books already have film adaptations, and some of them actually have several. When I say that I want them to be adapted, I want them to have a modern adaptation. Not necessarily I want them to be in 2025, setting or things like that. I just want a modern filmmaker to kind of take a look at it and put their spin on it. You know what I mean? I hope you get what I mean. So the first book is Lord of the Flies by William Golding. I actually watched one of the film adaptations from the 1960s. It's not a bad adaptation. It's very campy, but I do think a modern, more deep adaptation would kind of really exemplify the themes that are going on in this book. I think a modern adaptation would do this book the justice it kind of deserves. Personally, I don't like the ending. I think it's just weird, but everything else that happens within this book, I think could do a really great job. If you've watched Yellow Jackets, then you know it has the potential to take a darker, more serious turn, especially in the modern era. So that's why I think this should get another adaptation. Before you jump me, because I know I'm only on chapter 7, but Octavia Butler's writing is just so great that somebody needs to adapt Parable of the Sower. I'm not even asking, I'm begging, I'm manifesting it. It's so harrowing and so insightful and so reflective of, the time period that we're in. And what's funny enough is that it's set in 2025. So that just shows how ahead of the game Octavia Butler was. So this needs an adaptation expeditiously. Yep. Native Son by Richard Wright has 3 adaptations, one of which Richard Wright himself starred as Bigger Thomas, which was a little crazy because he was 40 years old playing a 20-year-old character and did not go so well. And then in 2019, they did a modernized version. And when I say modernized, it was set in the modern day. And I personally did not watch it because I think some novels should not be modernized, and I think this is one of them. Richard Wright wrote this during a time in African American history where it's imperative you understand the time and place to really figure out what he was trying to say here. Of course, there are some aspects that translate even to the modern era, especially some of, the actions Bigger Thomas takes or his feelings towards things. But realistically, because this is set in 1930s Chicago, this kind of has to stay in that era, in my opinion, because then you can see how little or how much has changed since the 1930s in terms of racism in America, the housing divide, what leads a person to take on the actions that they do. And so I think if somebody was to adapt it again, it 100% needs to be set in 1930s Chicago. The next is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. This follows 2 twin sisters who pass for white. And so one of the main things that is about this book is the legacy of passing and how it kind of forms your life as a whole if you continue to do so, or if you change your mind and you want to present as who you are authentically. If you've seen Passing on Netflix, which is adapted from the novel by Nella Larson, and you will kind of see that it's a possibility to adapt these books in a very nuanced way that still holds on to the source material and gives these characters agency. And I think in the right hands, this novel can do the same thing, especially considering the longevity of passing and what that says about our society, that some people prefer to do that versus be their true authentic self. I think this would work as a TV show because we're following 2 sisters and they're 2 different paths that they take once they leave each other and how their paths come back together through their children. Continuing on the path of 2 sisters, I would love to see Homegoing by Ya Jessie adapted. This is one of my favorite books probably of all time. I'm due for a reread, to be honest. I personally think that this needs to be adapted, especially into a TV show, because we have so many characters and each chapter is a new descendant from the 2 sisters. In the right hands, it can be so poignant and so beautiful and really showcase the resilience that takes place, as well as the heartbreak and the fragility of, growing up in these tumultuous times in African American culture. 100% recommend. If any filmmakers are somehow watching this, please get on your Zoom. I will be in the writer's room with you, okay? I have somewhat experience. I took a screenwriting class, okay? I've got credentials. It's okay. I can do it. Another one I would like to see in terms of an anthology series is Hitting a Straight Lick with a Crooked Stick by Zora Neale Hurston. This is a collection of short stories that had never been published, and I think an anthology series would do this justice. Each short story in here has something to say and something to give, and I think it would just be really beautiful to see on screen. I think Zora Neale Hurston's writing is really lyrical and beautiful, and it can also be seen that way on screen. So I would love to see it. So, The Street by Ann Petrie, that is being adapted into a film with Danielle Deadwyler, who's also going to star in it. I remember reading this maybe last year and I thought to myself, my God, this needs to be adapted in any way, shape, or form. I was so pleasantly surprised at how much I liked this book and how much, even though I'm not a mother, how much I related to Ludi. And so I really can't wait for the movie. I love Danielle Deadwyler. I think she's going to do a really great job with it, but I really hope it sticks to the source material because the last chapter blew my mind. Like it was a twist I didn't see coming. I'll say that. It's just so, so good. Then I would like to see Matrix by Lauren Groff adapted. This is the fictionalized version of Marie de France, who was a poet in the 12th century, and she's sent to England to kind of take over as a prioress for an impoverished abbey. And Lauren Groff tells you straight away she's not having a good time trying to get this abbey back into business. And one of the things that really stuck out to me was kind of isolation. They're really separated from a lot of people because it's in such a small part of England. And I think an indie filmmaker could kind of take this and make it as dreamlike as the writing is and really do something that showcases what Lauren Groff was trying to say. And then to flip it on the head, I remember in middle school, one of my dreams was to be a screenwriter, and this book was one of the reasons why. This is Hunger by Michael Grant. This is book 2 in the Gone series. And I remember reading this, just being blown away by the writing and the characters and where Michael Grant takes these characters. If you don't know the series, this is a dystopian novel where every adult has kind of vanished. And so anybody under the age of 17 is still living in this like little town and they're kind of covered by a dome. And so they have to fight to survive and kind of figure out, you know, how to live this life without these parents. Eventually, superpowers come into play and, things happen. And I remember reading this and I was like, my God, I need to see this on TV. I really, really do. And this was before any of the Hunger Games movies came out or The Maze Runner and things like that. So this was my first foray into YA dystopian. And to this day, I am 27 years old. To this day, I would still love to see this adapted. I will do it. Someone give me $200,000. I will make it happen. Okay? This was so good. Because I love books and movies so much, it's always so great when a book is adapted into a film, even if it's absolutely booty. I think the time and dedication that it took to adapting these films, it's really special. But there are a few adaptations of books that I really did not like, and this might be controversial, but I did not like the adaptation of Pachinko from Apple TV Plus. I had such high hopes for it because I love Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. And when I found out the TV show was kind of set in non-linear storytelling, I just got really annoyed. I think non-linear storytelling only works in books. I personally cannot stand it when it comes to television or movies. I understand that in some cases, non-linear storytelling is used to kind of showcase the past characters' actions influence the future characters' actions. But when it comes to Pachinko, I really didn't need it. I loved the book because it went from beginning to end. It didn't really go backwards or forwards in time and things like that. So that was one of the things I didn't really like. But for the most part, I kind of really like adaptations of books. I really liked Baz Luhrmann's adaptation of The Great Gatsby is my secret guilty pleasure. I personally love that movie. I watch it every year. I just love how colorful it is and the music. I think the music is so good. Farewell My Concubine by Lillian Lee. That's one of the few times where I'm like 50-50 on the adaptation. I read the book first and then I watched the movie. I think my only gripe with it is that at the end, it doesn't showcase that the two main characters stopped being friends once they lived in two separate countries. You know, in the movie, it kind of makes it seem like they're still friends or they still know each other or whatever, but in the book, they never see each other again, ever. And I think the movie's already heartbreaking, and I think if they added that, it would have just been a little bit more heartbreaking. So maybe that's why they cut it out. I don't know. Either way, it's a fantastic movie. I think everybody should watch it, and I think everybody should read the book. Another one that I really liked is Giant by Edna Ferber. I watched the movie first with Rock Hudson, James Dean, and Elizabeth Taylor, and I loved the movie so much. I went and I got the book. And again, this is another one where it's 50-50, where I think I loved the movie more than the book. I enjoyed Edna Ferber's writing. I did get her next novel, which is So Big, but I will say the film does a better job at kind of showcasing the themes that Edna Ferber was trying to write, which is, the difference between North and South, because one of the characters is from the northern United States and the one of the characters is from Texas. Still a great novel. I think I just like the movie a bit more because I love Rock Hudson. So I don't know. That might just be me. And so that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.